It's my nerd world. Welcome to it. A Star Wars podcast. We've got a lot of news to cover. It sounds like I've been saying that every week, but we actually really do. Surprisingly, very little of it is coming from Disney Plus Day, which is the day I'm recording this podcast. Was it a dud? I'll share my thoughts with you. We have some Acolyte information for you. A little bit of details on the shooting schedule. A High Republic video game in the works. And then we're going to dive into all the news that broke that wasn't really coming from official Disney sources, but is potentially the biggest news of the week and the past few months. New movies. What's in? What's out? Who's directing? What's coming up next? Well, it's all coming up on this week's A Star Wars Podcast.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one.
There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
My nerd world.
Just let it in.
It is my nerd world, a Star Wars podcast, and I am your host, Jon Justice. I'm glad that you're once again with the show. Remember, you can always go to mynerdworld.net for all things My Nerd World, and plus the EMBARK science fiction space opera series, written by yours truly, Jon Justice. And as always, I'll give some details on that towards the end of the show. All right, so it's been a really busy, confusing, exciting, and kind of disappointing Star Wars week. So I don't want to say disappointing Star Wars week, and I'm talking about Disney Plus Day, which is today and is essentially over now. There was a lot of hype going into this, and actually news that we covered on last week's show of expectations of what we were going to get on Disney Plus Day. And it turns out that those things didn't happen. We did get some cool stuff, right? In my opinion. And if it hadn't been for some of the erroneous reports that were put out by very credible websites, I think that what we got would have been a lot cooler than how everybody is looking at it. But because the expectations were so high going into Disney Plus Day, I think people are a little let down, and I'm a little let down too. However, we did get some cool things, and I do want to talk a little bit about that. So let's go ahead and dive into the start of the show and talk about Disney Plus Day. What did we get? What didn't we get? And, well, let's talk about it.
This is not going to go the way you think.
No, it is not going to go the way you think. So Disney Plus Day has been hyped for quite a long time. And there was a lot of expectations that we were going to get all kinds of different, certainly news items, right? And more specifically, trailers. A lot of different sites were reporting that we were going to get a Sizzle Reel for the Andor show. We have received a Sizzle Reel for that a while back, but we haven't really seen anything of that show yet, and we know that it's coming soon next year. There was talks of things for the Bad Batch Season 2. There was talk of a Sizzle Reel for the Mandalorian Season 3, which a lot of individuals downplayed simply because that is very early on into production. But the big one was the expectation that we were going to get some sort of teaser trailer for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And again, a lot of reports were a lot of different outlets were running with that news. And the fact that we got the Book of Boba trailer last week added a bit of credibility to that. And I actually kind of agreed with the line of thinking that, okay, we're going to get something special with regard to the Obi-Wan Kenobi live-action series coming next year. They want to make sure that they get the Boba Fett teaser trailer out of the way, since we're getting that at the end of December. So they drop that early next week to give it some time to breathe, for the podcast to talk about it and for the fandom to get excited. And then we could get all excited all over again when we get Obi-Wan Kenobi news. So yesterday, on Thursday, we got a leak, and the leak was a sizzle reel. I'm not going to share with you the audio because we got too much stuff to get through. I'm sure you've watched it by now. It is available now on Disney+, but this got leaked yesterday, and this was a very short sizzle reel highlighting a few comments in an interview with Ewan McGregor and the director Deborah Chow. Plus, it included a bunch of concept art for the show. Now, insiders who attended the Disney Investor Day, which I believe took place either earlier this year or the end of last year, were quick to note that this was the teaser, this was the sizzle reel that was shown to those who were in attendance at Investor Day, but it was not shown to those individuals who were watching it live online. And so yesterday, the speculation began to swirl that, so this got leaked from the Disney Plus, from the Disney Investor Day. This is what the investors saw last year, but we're still going to be getting an Obi-Wan Kenobi teaser trailer today. Disney was quick to go and yank this down from most of the websites that were putting it up, which kind of lended some credence to the line of thinking that, okay, they don't want people to see it. They're going to be releasing it on their own, or they're going to be releasing something special for Disney Plus Day. I think the proper way to interpret why Disney was yanking that leak down from so many websites, was that was the only thing we ended up getting for Disney Plus Day. We did get the Boba Fett documentary, which I do want to talk about here in just a moment. But when it comes to what we got for Star Wars, that was pretty much it. We got this 1 minute plus, I think it's actually only a minute long, sizzle reel for Obi-Wan Kenobi, which includes some concept art, which I do want to talk about. And then we got this 20-minute documentary about the history of Boba Fett, which was absolutely fascinating, by the way. And I will get to that. But that was all we ended up getting for Disney Plus Day. And the Under the Helmet Legacy of Boba Fett documentary and this Obi-Wan Kenobi sizzle reel. And again, I think it was a matter of expectations. A lot of people were so hyped up because so many different outlets had been promoting that we were going to get Andor and Bad Batch and, who knows, Ahsoka, who knows what we're going to get. And we simply didn't get any of those things. Now, I don't assume to know, why Disney operates the way that they do. My assumption is that with so much content coming out next year and so many opportunities to hype these individual shows during the lead up to these individual shows, that Disney feels it's best to wait until we're closer to those shows before they begin showing too much. And that makes some sense. I know that it's disappointing for fans of Star Wars because we obviously want more items. I know Marvel got quite a bit today. And overall, if you step back from Star Wars and look at Disney Plus Day, it was pretty big. I mean, they released Shang-Chi available for streaming. We've got Jungle Cruise available for streaming. There was a lot of different Marvel news, a lot of different Pixar news. And so outside of Star Wars, there was really a lot that went on. But of course, Star Wars fans are hungry for content. We're rarely ever satisfied and are more than happy to go and vocalize our dissatisfaction with that on different media platforms. And so you end up looking at it from a Star Wars perspective when it comes to Disney Plus Day, and it kind of feels like a bit of a dud. I don't think it would have felt that way nearly as much, again, if we didn't have the expectations that we did. For the average individual and the casual Star Wars fan, they probably didn't care nearly as much. All right. So with that bit of doing that air quotes thing with my fingers out of the way, let's talk about some of the positive things, though, and then we'll dive into all the news, because we got a lot of news to get to. So, again, the Obi-Wan Kenobi Sizzle Reel, the most significant pieces of, that were presented in that Sizzle Reel are the concept art. And the concept art is really, really pretty awesome. So I'm going to share with you my thoughts as I flip through some of these pictures and do my best to theater of the mind this. I would encourage you to go and watch the Sizzle Reel for yourself. Head on over to the Reddit Leaks Star Wars page. You can see that's what I'm looking at right now. Star Wars Newsnet.com. StarWarsNewsNet.com has an article up as well where they have these photographs that are available too. So one of the first pieces of concept art is we see Obi-Wan Kenobi looking very rugged. In sort of long robes, is something you would expect to see him in. He's riding an Opie. For those that are familiar with the Opie, first shown in the Phantom Menace, I believe, and also what he rode in on at the very end of Revenge of the Sith. That was the creature that he ended up riding in on at the very end of Revenge of the Sith when he took Luke Skywalker to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. It looks to be Tatooine simply because of the fact that there is a moisture evaporator in the background that has a very distinctive Tatooine aesthetic to it. Beautiful piece of artwork, Tatooine skyline, brown and tan palettes, with that. The next photo we get is obviously one of the most exciting ones, and it appears to be Obi-Wan Kenobi fighting with a fully dressed, Darth Vader. The hood is up. They're in a stance that is very sort of reminiscent to the artwork that we saw for Revenge of the Sith. It appears as if there's some sort of fire or lava surrounding them, which would lend, immediately my thoughts go to Mustafar once again, which would make some sense based off of some of the other pieces of artwork. Find that a little interesting, considering the fact that that's where the last battle took between the two of these individuals. But this is also concept art, and, concept art is concept art. Could just be simply, give us an image of Obi-Wan Kenobi fighting Darth Vader, a younger Obi-Wan Kenobi fighting against Darth Vader. And I think that it does obviously go and point to the fact that there is going to be this rematch of the century, or however Kathleen Kennedy had worded it. I don't think there's any question with regard to that. And as a matter of fact, at the end of the Sizzle Reel, we do see a few seconds of Ewan McGregor training with a mock-up of a lightsaber. We also get an image of what appears to be Darth Vader sitting in what would be probably his own personal throne room. The aesthetic looks very much like it's from Darth Vader's castle. Seems to be looking at a hologram. Can't really tell what is on the hologram. All black in the background. The chair actually looks very much like the spire from outside of Darth Vader's castle. There's another shot a little farther away of the same chamber that we saw before. It doesn't appear, looks like there is a hologram image there, but it doesn't appear to have Darth Vader in the shot. Then we get a really unique picture here, and this is cool for a couple of different reasons. My guess would be, based off of the location, what little art we can see, but we see some of the adobe domes in the background, appears to be Tatooine, could be lifted, directly from the Mandalorian. Looks to be a shuttle of some type that seems to be a derivative of Krennic's, director Krennic's shuttle from Rogue One. The body style is very similar, just has much smaller wings to it, and I really, really dig it. I loved Krennic's shuttle from that movie. I thought it was awesome. So it looks like sort of it has the core fuselage of what Krennic's shuttle looked like, just scaled down a bit with smaller wings that would fold up when landing and fold down when in flight. You've got two stormtroopers walking behind what appears to be an Inquisitor, so that would be sort of further confirmation of Inquisitors playing a role in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Then we have a street scene, which could be lifted right out of Blade Runner. Actually, it looks like Coruscant to me, if I'm being honest. It looks like perhaps the lower levels of Coruscant. Quite a bit of neon in the background, very dark. Then we have a really, really fascinating piece of artwork. If you had shown me this without any sort of context, I might have immediately said this was from The Empire Strikes Back. The reason I say that is it appears to be, although looking at it closer, it looks to be some kind of cave. It could actually be ice if you look at it. The reason I say Empire Strikes Back, though, is because it has speeders in it. More specifically, snow speeders in it. What we can see of a few of the individuals painted in the concept art, they don't appear to be wearing cold weather, cold climate clothes. But they are surrounded by 6 different speeders. Now, what I find really interesting about this is I'm going to guess it's probably not Hoth. Okay. Unless they ended up going back there for some reason. Okay, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It does show that perhaps Obi-Wan Kenobi visits, some... Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. I got to back up now, don't I? I do have to back up now. I'm getting my timelines mixed up. That actually could be Hoth, considering that this is taking place... Well, okay. I hadn't really thought this through before going through the artwork, so this is taking place post-Revenge of the Sith. The rebels were located on Yavin and ended up going to Hoth. Okay, so it could be Hoth if they established a presence there prior to A New Hope, which I don't think we've ever established. I believe in the crawl for The Empire Strikes Back, it seems pretty clear that they found a new location. Either way, I was always fascinated, and the whole reason I'm kind of, and I apologize, I'm kind of scattered here because I got thrown off on the timeline of when this show takes place, because it takes place, right after Revenge of the Sith, so before A New Hope, in which case it wouldn't necessarily be Hoth. Could just be any rebel location. However, the line from The Empire Strikes Back of when Han Solo wants to go looking for Luke Skywalker, and he makes the comment of taking the speeders, but we're having trouble adapting them to the cold. I was always fascinated by that, because obviously that meant that these speeders could be adapted for any type of climate. There was actually and I've talked about it a long time ago on a podcast, but there was a Lego set that was put out that showed a brown speeder that was supposed to be taken from the Battle of Jakku. And there was a lot of rumors swirling around that there may have been a cutscene from one of the movies. I believe that set came out right around the time of The Last Jedi, if I'm not mistaken, after The Force Awakens. But the speeder was designed a little bit differently, but obviously it was the same type of vehicle, snow speeder, that we were used to seeing in The Empire Strikes Back. It had like an extra wing on it. So I just thought that was for me personally, because I love vehicles, and the thought of maybe Obi-Wan Kenobi going and visiting the rebels at a location where they have these speeders, I thought was really interesting. Then we get this fascinating shot, and my initial thought was that it was Coruscant, meaning the Jedi Palace at Coruscant. It is a massive hall. A massive hall, huge multi-story high columns. It looks like looking out on windows, filled with stormtroopers. A massive hall, like as far as the eye can see. It looks like something that you would have seen again in something on Coruscant in the Jedi Temple. It could be Coruscant. The emerald green is throwing me off. It looks like you have an emerald green sky coming in from the outside, bathing this massive hall with all these stormtroopers in this beautiful emerald green. The reason I was a little bit hesitant is you look out the window and there seems to be these columns that look almost like palm trees, but now that I'm looking at it further, it could just be part of the architecture outside. Then we get another piece of art, undisclosed location, could be any planet. A lot of tan colors, doesn't appear to be Tatooine by any stretch, or any sort of location that I'm familiar with seeing. And just a lot of people milling about. Looks like a lot of storefronts, maybe a bar. Much different architectural style than I that I remember seeing. And I'm interested to hear and listen to other podcasts as they break this down, because perhaps somebody with a little bit more knowledge of this type of artwork maybe have seen something like this before. So that wraps up. We got that, and at the end of it, like I said, we got a little bit of Ewan McGregor training, and then comments about how excited he was that he was going to be, acting once again with Hayden Christensen. The other thing that we got today, and I'll spend just a minute here talking about it, was the Under the Helmet Boba Fett documentary, which ran about 20 minutes long. That was really, really interesting. And I'm planning on watching it again because I love seeing archival footage of the original trilogy around the making of the original trilogy. And within this archival footage, we saw the first introduction that the production team ever got of Boba Fett, which I thought was fascinating. We got this little backstory about how George Lucas in Marin County took part in a parade in his hometown, and he brought an actual on-set he brought an on-set used Vader costume. He had somebody in a Vader costume that was used on set in either A New Hope or The Empire Strikes Back, an individual walking down the street in the parade. And with him was the on-set costume for Boba Fett. And that was one of the first appearances that Boba Fett ever had to anybody. I'm not sure the timeline around when the action figure reveal took place that was available with the proofs of purchase that, everybody was so excited about, right? We obviously first saw Boba Fett in the cartoon in the holiday special, right? That was the first official introduction. But again, this addition to having Boba Fett with Darth Vader walking in this parade was the first time that the public at large actually saw the on-screen version. And they had footage of this and fans having no idea who this character was, but getting autographs from Boba Fett. They had a bit of a retrospective in the documentary with Jeremy Bulloch, who played Boba Fett in the original trilogy. Talked about how he only had about little over 6 minutes of screen time and only 4 or 5 pieces of dialogue in that time, but how famous the character became. And of course, we know what we're getting now, an entire series based on Boba Fett and Tamira Morrison reprising his role, as Boba Fett, the son of Jango Fett, and they had some interviews with the individuals that played the characters. Really fascinating documentary, and I encourage you to go and check it out. Really did enjoy it. So, like I said, look from a Disney standpoint, from a Star Wars fan standpoint, it was cool. We got some cool stuff today. It just wasn't what everybody was expecting, because a lot of websites said that we were supposed to be getting a lot more, and that just didn't happen. But that is not even close to being the big news of the week. And we have a couple other items we have to get to before we even get to that. So let's move on here.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
All right, we've got a couple different articles from our LRM Online. This one is with regard to the Acolyte. According to the ever-reliable Production Weekly podcast, we now know that the Acolyte will shoot potentially sometime between May and November, and it'll be in the U.S., not at Pinewood Studios. The Leslie Headland-led Star Wars Disney Plus show is certainly one of the most intriguing to fans. The show is seemingly set further back than any live-action Star Wars project before. Current estimates are that this show will take place between the periods between the High Republic and the fall of the High Republic, which begins just before the Phantom Menace. Rumors are this show will take place around 70 to 100 years prior to the events of the Phantom Menace. And whilst we do not know for certain, vague rumors, as well as the logo, have led fans to think this show will deal primarily with the dark side and potentially the Sith. However, until more details emerge, it's hard to say for sure. There was a rumor recently that the Acolyte would shoot February in Pinewood. Talking to a few insiders about this, we wondered whether that was at the point at the point the case and things that was at a point where things got shifted around. LRM Online already confirmed that the Acolyte would not shoot in Pinewood, at least not that quick. Now we have some confirmation that the show will actually shoot in the U.S. in that May to November window. That likely means a release is planned sometime in 2023, but when I would not bet on it just yet. So again, there's a bit of Acolyte news. I've talked about the Acolyte a bit on the show in the past. Don't really know much more than what I just laid out right there. I do find it very intriguing that we would get a show focused on the dark side, and I'm very excited to see what Leslie Headland has in store for that particular show. All right, moving on. From Bespin Bulletin, we've been hearing rumors, for those that are into video games, that Quantic Dream have begun working on a Star Wars video game, and we may now have some new details. According to video games journalist and well-known insider Jeff Grubb, the Quantic Dream Star Wars video game is titled Star Wars Eclipse and will be set during the High Republic era. Grubb didn't provide any additional details, but stressed that this is currently just a rumor. Little is known about Eclipse, but previous reports claimed that the title would stray away from the usual interactive storytelling and quick-time event-driven games that Quantic Dream typically make, such as Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human. I'm not familiar with any of these games. Instead, the title will feature a more traditional gameplay, possibly open world, and could include multiplayer elements per a report that came out back in September. The official Star Wars website teased a video game announcement for December 14th as part of their Bring Home the Bounty promotional campaign, so maybe there's a chance that is when Eclipse, if real, could be announced, or maybe even at the Game Awards, which takes place a few days before December 10th. So there you go. And again, the Star Wars The High Republic was I know before sort of touted as being like what they did with Shadows of the Empire. And again, just a quick little history lesson for those that aren't familiar. Shadows of the Empire came out during the time between the Return of the Jedi and before the prequels came out. It was kind of a dead time for Star Wars, and what Lucasfilm wanted to do was put together a package of content that would encompass everything but the film. So you would get a soundtrack, you would get a book, you would get a comic book series, you would get a video game, basically all of the different things you would get without a movie. And it was set between The Empire Strikes Back and I always get this wrong. Was it set between A New Hope and all right, hold on 1 second. Set between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Again, it's been a very long week, and I'm covering a lot of Star Wars news. So, when they announced The High Republic, there was a lot of sort of chatter that this was going to be very similar. We haven't gotten a soundtrack yet for it, but we certainly have gotten books. We've gotten comic books, and now it looks like we may be getting a video game as well. I have not, and I've mentioned this before, I have not consumed any of the High Republic content as of yet. I've been so busy, again, writing my own stories and books and covering the regular Star Wars news that I just have not had a chance to dive into it. Maybe at some point I will. Maybe over the holidays, I'll grab something High Republic. If you have a recommendation, by the way, for somebody that hasn't read anything High Republic whatsoever, if you have a recommendation of a place for me to start, by all means, drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Again, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Love to know your thoughts on if I'm going to read any, whether it's a comic book or whether it's a novel. As somebody who hasn't touched any of the High Republic stuff, what would you suggest that I start with? All right, now we get into the real big news of the week.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
So, Patty Jenkins' Star Wars movie Rogue Squadron has been delayed. That's right. So I'll give you the story from The Hollywood Reporter, and I'm sure you've all heard about this by now, right? Rogue Squadron, the Star Wars feature project, due to be directed by Wonder Woman filmmaker Patty Jenkins, has been caught in the tractor beam and will no longer make it to the big screen. Jenkins and writer Matthew Robinson have been developing Squadron for Lucasfilm for over a year with the goal of starting production in 2022. It was to have gone into pre-production by the end of this year. However, sources say that the producers and the filmmaking team came to the realization that Jenkins' schedule and other commitments wouldn't allow for the window needed to make the movie in 2022. Thus, Squadron has been taken off the production table. The hope is that once Jenkins fulfills her previous commitments, she will be able to return to the project. Squadron would have been the first feature since the end of the Skywalker saga, which wrapped up in 2019's Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Its release date of December 22nd, 2023, and while that currently remains in place, dates can always shift. It's unclear what, if any, of Jenkins' commitments were at issue specifically, but she is in development on Wonder Woman 3 for Warner Brothers and Cleopatra for Paramount. Sources say Wonder Woman 3 was initially to have follow Squadron, but that could shift now that the latter is off the table. So, several insiders, and one of them being, I'm going to pull them up here, One Take News, who also goes by, I'm sorry, I'm on Reddit right now, and I completely forgot what else they go by, because they were the ones to first go and report on this particular story. Big Screen Leaks. Also, so Big Screen Leaks started teasing, and I think we talked about it on last week's show. We did. So on last week's show, we started talking about how there was another movie that was supposed to be filmed next year that wasn't any of the ones that we'd heard of already, right? Big Screen Leaks was the first to go and report on that. With regard to, shortly afterwards, the news that Rogue Squadron was being delayed, Big Screen Leaks tweeted, now that it's delayed, it's a good time to mention that the film wasn't just delayed because of Jenkins' schedule, but that production on Rogue Squadron isn't going well behind the scenes. It was never going to be ready to shoot next year. So take that for what you will. So, this thus began the speculation of, all right, so Rogue Squadron got delayed. There's another movie that's shooting next year. What is that movie going to be? And we talked quite a bit about that on last week's show. I would encourage you to go back and check it out if you haven't listened to it, as I went into great detail over what that possible movie could be. We have some further news now. A couple different places are reporting these things. First, we'll start with Cinelinx. What time period will the next Star Wars film take place? With Rogue Squadron being delayed and rumors abounding, let's talk about what we've heard regarding the next Star Wars film and which era it'll be set in. Things in the Star Wars universe are once again getting a bit of a shakeup, and while the TV side of things is chugging along nicely, the franchise's return to the big screen has been hit with another setback. Myself, along with a few others, began hearing word last week that Rogue Squadron was facing an imminent delay. You may have seen a handful of cryptic tweets from various people regarding stuff about the Old Republic era. Then, Star Wars Newsnet dropped the story about Rogue Squadron getting delayed with a Knights of the Old Republic era film set to take its 2023 release date. By and large, this lined up with many things that we've been hearing as well, but I'm getting ahead of myself a bit. Let's look at what we know. Rogue Squadron delay isn't a sudden thing. They've heard that this has been that they have been having some issues with the script, and they want to tighten it up. I wouldn't panic, as it seems like something they still want to do and get right. Lucasfilm has been developing a number of movie projects over the years. They haven't been sitting idle, and have some projects that they've put work into specifically for instances like this, where they can swap projects around without having to totally scrap release dates. This gives them the chance to still produce stuff regularly and give directors more time if and when needed. Contracts have been signed and space allotted for cameras to roll on film in Pinewood early next year. This is something I've heard was going down just as recently as a week ago. There's little chance that Lucasfilm wasn't already aware of and thinking about a delay at this point, so it seems pretty clear they're hellbound and determined to film a movie early next year, around the springtime, to launch in their December 2023 slot. Now, here's what they know. Which film will be taking Rogue Squadron's place? If you asked me on Friday, I would have quickly agreed that it was an Old Republic film. After all, that script has been known and kicked around since 2019. It seems like the easiest thing that would be ready. Maybe even with it being J.D. Dillard's rumored project to direct, which we've talked about on previous shows. I had a source reach out to me saying the replacement movie would be taking place 250 years before The Phantom Menace. This would put the story firmly in the High Republic era rather than Knights of the Old Republic. So I have sources I trust telling me the Old Republic era is the next era, with other sources I trust saying High Republic era. I've heard about the Old Republic projects for a while and know that they're also working for a TV series of some sort for Disney+, so part of me is leaning towards that being the likeliest choice. That said, High Republic is much more in the public eye at the moment. The publishing initiative has been highly successful and continuing to hit bestseller lists every single release. With the architects behind it having done a number of super secret meetings and planning sessions, I could see how a script could have been developed in relative secrecy. So, it's not outside the realm of possibility. They could be ready to roll on that by next year. All of this is a long way of saying, I'm not sure. It could be a matter of getting wires crossed, with one thing being a TV series and the other being a movie. Either way, I'm reasonably sure the next Star Wars film is going to take fans to a brand new era. I'm crossing my fingers we will get a formal announcement before too long, especially if they plan to still film early next year. Okay, so that was from Cinelinx and I believe Jordan Mason, who is a very credible source within the fandom. Now, LRM Online also has their version of this. And here's what they say. Old Republic or High Republic movie? Yesterday, you'll remember, we covered some Star Wars Barside buzz about a film supposedly filming next year. That story is in the related section below. Early reports by some insiders said that this would be an Old Republic movie. However, yesterday, Jordan Mason posted an article on Cinelinx, and in this article, as I just read to you, expressed his unsureness about whether this was an Old Republic or a High Republic movie. Here's what Mason wrote, or at least the piece of the information. Okay, and that is what I had just shared with you a moment ago. So I'll skip ahead to what LMR says. Right now, not only can LRM back up what Mason is saying here. The source is saying that Old Republic is the next era. Other sources saying it's a High Republic era. Heard about Old Republic projects for a while. They're also working on a TV series. Which one's which? So, LRM can back up what Mason is saying here. We are also going to throw our hat into the ring, however, and lean towards High Republic as far as what I'm hearing from our own sources. I spoke with Jordan last night about our information. Also, to let him know we would be running this piece today as a follow-up to his own. LRM source are telling us that whilst there is something Old Republic in the works, but it's not this next movie. Our sources are all saying that this will be a Star Wars High Republic movie. What we've also heard is that the plan behind this movie is something aimed at a younger audience. The budget for this movie is also said to be much lower than, say, Rogue Squadron, recently delayed, which was no holds barred. If we look at the High Republic books that are out, an example may be Race to Crash Point, which is considered a junior novel. Whatever is planned for the Old Republic is apparently a bit more of a big deal, though. Though, what that is, we have no information on yet. My opinion, says LRM, on what I think the idea of the movie is aimed at young people, well, we could be here all day. Briefly, one of the things I loved about Star Wars as a kid was that it seemed like it was for grown-ups, but was great anyways. As for young adult novels, too often an excuse for poor writing. My worry is that a lower-budget movie targeted at kids, and yet that's exactly what I'm hearing is the case. My Cantina co-host, Kyle Malone, our navigator, Shockey, and I have been debating this behind the scenes for hours now. So, that's a very interesting tidbit, that this could be a film that is geared more towards a young adult teen audience. That being said, that's kind of what Star Wars is. I mean, that's what Star Wars always was supposed to be. It was. Yeah, it was. I mean, that's what George Lucas wanted. George Lucas wanted to make a kids film. And while it had adult themes to it, they were aimed at children, right? They got darker as they went along, especially when you look at the prequels. Phantom Menace is certainly sort of a teen, young adult film, if not geared even younger because of the age of Anakin. And you could arguably say that a bit about the sequel trilogy, despite its themes. So, I think when we think of, in modern terms, teen and young adult, we kind of gravitate towards things like the Maze Runner or Hunger Games or Divergent. I'm just sort of shooting from the hip here, maybe. But, you could put Harry Potter into that category as well, right? So for me personally, I'm not necessarily all that, I'm more curious about the era that it's set in. And again, I'm not familiar with the High Republic material enough yet to really voice an opinion on whether or not I want to film. It's Star Wars. I know that I will watch it. Now, we're not done. There's still more. So after all that news dropped, then One Take News, which is also Big Screen Leaks, dropped another bomb. Chloe Zhao is one of the biggest directors in Hollywood right now, coming off of 2 Oscar wins for Nomadland that included Best Picture. Zhao recently directed the latest MCU flick, Eternals, to mixed reception from critics, but audiences acclaimed it. I didn't particularly care for the film. I thought it was a slog. And I'm not going to get into it right now. I'm talking Star Wars. Don't need to get into it. Except to say Eternals felt like its own intellectual property. It felt like its own sci-fi movie, giving a different take on the history of the planet, and completely separate from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even though it's not. And maybe if I had watched it and it was, I would have enjoyed it more. That being said, I liked Chloe Zhao's directing style. I don't think it was her as a director that made the movie, that maybe not enjoy the movie. I just didn't particularly care for the story in and of itself. Okay. During the press for Eternals, Zhao expressed her love of Star Wars and how she'd love to direct one. Since then, we've heard some very exciting details about this possibility. We've vetted the story out to as many sources as possible, and based on that, One Take News can exclusively report that Chloe Zhao is very close to signing on to direct, if not having already signed on to direct Kevin Feige's Star Wars film. Either way, sources told us that she was always the top choice for Feige, and it's only a matter of time before the deal is done. This is a very exciting prospect, as it's clear that Zhao has a love for the source material, and she stated multiple times in interviews that she's down to do a Star Wars film and she'd love to do Feige's film. Now we know why. While plot details are heavily under wraps right now, it seems that we should be getting an official announcement very soon. Kevin Feige's Star Wars film is in development for an unknown release date. So Dan Diego Andaluz on Twitter at the Diego ANDALUZ posted this. Seems like the news that Chloe Zhao is set to direct Kevin Feige's Star Wars project is out. A very exciting collaboration that has a lot of potential. Congrats to Big Screen Leaks and One Take News for being the ones to break it. This Zhao-Feige Star Wars announcement was one of the things that I was teasing a while back. Most of the details are still under wraps, but Zhao and Feige's film, written by Michael Waldron, who wrote Loki, will be set before any other Star Wars, before any other film in the Star Wars universe. And so that brings us full circle to, is this Chloe Zhao, Kevin Feige produced film the one that the other sources that I was just talking about, is it that movie? I could definitely see, based off of what I saw in Eternals, Chloe Zhao, and based off what little I know about the High Republic, shooting and filming a High Republic film. That makes all the sense in the world to me. As a matter of fact, it was funny because I kind of got that in a bizarre sort of way. You look at the High Republic, and again, what little I know of it. I mean, I've read articles about it. I'm not completely void of my knowledge of the High Republic. I've read several articles about how the High Republic and the storylines behind it, and the characters behind it. I read a lot of the stuff that comes out. I just haven't actually sat down and read any of the source material. But based off of her visual style and what we've gotten or what we've received so far from the High Republic, she really does seem to be completely fit to go, a perfect fit to go and be a part of or film that High Republic movie. Now, that would push back against the Big Screen Leaks comment that a film would be shooting next year that wasn't one of the ones that had been mentioned before, but again, it all begins to make sense. It also makes sense that Disney would not have dropped this particular piece of information now, right? They would not have dropped during Disney Plus Day. That wouldn't make any sense at all. But I imagine that sometime in the near future, we will get an official announcement of whatever that movie will be filming next week. And who knows? You know, the way that Disney works, you know, they watch this stuff online. They could have been planning a lot of these announcements and decided to wait because it went out online already. Or, you know, this stuff gets out there to the Hollywood Reporter because Disney allows it to get out there to the Hollywood Reporter. And they let other outlets be the ones to go and report on this type of news. Rather than go and make an official announcement until they're ready to personally make an announcement, they leak it out to these sources. And it could also be the reason why we didn't get more stuff for Disney Plus Day. Because really, I mean, what is Disney Plus Day about? Sort of going full circle before we get into listener feedback on the show this week. You know, Disney Plus is more about getting people to sign on to the subscription service, getting people hyped up for it, and casual fans, right? There's no need to overload casual fans with more than what they received. We got a Book of Boba Fett trailer out last week. We'll get more Book of Boba Fett stuff here in the coming month, right? It's coming out in just a little over a month now. And we got the Sizzle Reel hyping up Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we got this really cool little documentary. And on top of all that, when it comes to us, the fans, we've been fed with a whole bunch of news this week, even if it didn't come from official doing that thing with my fingers sources. What do you think about all of this? I would love to know. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. All right. We've got some listener feedback. It's good stuff this week. Even if this is not stuff that you wrote in, you're going to want to hear this. Don't go anywhere. Let's go ahead and get into it.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
All right, the first email comes from friend of the show, Ben Fisher. It's been a busy summer. I've not written in a while, but I'm still listening, and I've been getting chores done on the weekend. I've been on I have the 6th book on Kindle. That would be EMBARK, Fear the Dangerous Night. And I plan on reading it in a few weeks while I go deer hunting in Wisconsin. It is where I read your first 2 books a few years back, and it has been a good tradition for me to read in the deer stand when the timing works out. That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. MyNerdWorld.net if you want to find out more about my books. And I will do a plug for them for those that are new with the show coming up at the end of the show. I'm excited for the Book of Boba Fett. I do think this series is going to be about him taking over as an underworld boss and making another crime syndicate or taking over for the Hutts. I do worry the series is pretty much going to be on Tatooine and not a lot of world exploration, so I'm curious how it plays out. I don't know a lot about the crime syndicates, but I wonder if we'll see something tied in with the Red Key Raiders. In doing some online reading and research, I came across this on Wikipedia. Could potentially see some of this getting played out in the series, talking about the Red Key Raiders. I've been thinking more about what I want in my next Star Wars movies, and I'm kind of leaning towards something that Marvel did. I do like the Star Wars trilogies, and they're a lot of fun, but I like the idea of 5 to 8 movies that introduce different characters, some more important than others, maybe from different timelines, and bringing them all together. I think if Disney Lucasfilm laid out a little bit more of a little bit at one of their conventions, fans would jump on too. I think this would be a good way to get different directors involved and limit some of the issues that fans had with the sequel trilogy. Since each one of these movies can typically be a standalone film, having different directors like Marvel could easily be done. I personally did not mind the different directors with the sequel trilogy, but I do understand some of the sentiment that the 3 movies did lack some cohesiveness from how they were filmed. Either way, just give me a Star Wars movie. I feel that it's been way too long, and I need a movie to get excited about to see at the theater. I've not seen Dune. You need to. It's awesome. But I may try this weekend, but I'm also just fine waiting for it to stream later. Thanks, Ben Fisher. Thank you, Ben. And thank you so much for purchasing my books. It really does mean a lot. And again, if you want to support the show, I don't do Patreon. But I do ask that if you like science fiction, right, and haven't picked up my books yet, I encourage you to do so. And again, I'll give you some details on that before the end of the show. All right, Javier writes this and says, I have to say I love your idea to share personal histories related to Star Wars. Here's mine. In 1999, I was so happy and eager for an upcoming Star Wars movie. I met my girlfriend. I went with my girlfriend at that time, my wife now. She'd never watched a Star Wars movie, so I explained all, even the Fox fanfare. So we watched twice. One Sunday noon, lunching with the family, my brothers and I were talking about the movie and wondering who'd be the mysterious Lord Sith. And my wife said, it's Palpatine. So obvious, she said. My brothers and I, staring at each other with our mouths wide open, we couldn't believe it. Imagine our face. She got it right, and we didn't. Even nowadays, she's mocking us for that. Javier. Thank you so much for that story, Javier. And, you know, what I love about that is the fact that, you know, that circumstance that happened for you was like what happened with the Darth Vader reveal. Spoiler alert, he's Luke's dad. When the, you know, the I am your father, right, moment. And so it's cool to see that those moments in the prequel trilogy worked for other individuals who caught up with the stories later in life. I think that's awesome. All right, Irie Davis writes in, responding to the podcast a couple of weeks back with all the awards The Rise of Skywalker got. So wonderful to hear. Congratulations to The Rise of Skywalker. Let's see. Loved Dune, absolutely loved, glad that George Lucas is not the Messiah, but rather took a lot of inspiration from Dune and subsequently brought it into Star Wars. Star Wars is for children, Dune is for grown-ups. I have to shut all of the negative rubbish to do with the trilogy. I've loved it from the beginning to the end, and it's so satisfying to see a novella based on Reylo made the New York Times best-selling list high up and flown off the shelf. I'm still sad that Reylo was ignored in the end. So much potential lost for the greatest love story ever told, encompassing every human emotion possible. I find them in other things that satisfies me. I fear it won't be long before Dune will get the same treatment. There is so much trash on YouTube and misinformation perpetuated by sick individuals making their money out of falsehoods. Long live Star Wars, long live Dune. Get rid of the fear of offending these so-called fans. One person in charge is the answer for continuity, for inclusivity, for the future. Irene Davis has been a long listener and fan of the show, and thank you so much, Irene, for sharing your thoughts. Last one comes from Salvador. Salvador writes this. Awesome podcast, as always. Thank you so much, Salvador. I appreciate it. Do you know something about a Ben Solo trilogy in the works? Maybe episodes 10, 11, 12? A YouTuber said their sources tell him it's in the early works. Daisy Ridley and Kathleen Kennedy had breakfast a few days ago, too. So I have not heard anything about a Ben Solo trilogy. And my guess is, since I kind of only peruse sources that I trust, and none of them have talked about it, that there isn't any chance that that would be the case of a Ben Solo trilogy. My expectation and my guess is that Adam Driver is done with Star Wars, but never say never. Daisy Ridley did have lunch with Kathleen Kennedy, which I thought was fascinating. But that's all rumors at this point in time. Could I potentially see something with Daisy Ridley and Rey down the line? Yes, I could, absolutely. And I think it would be really smart. Daisy Ridley and John Boyega have kind of fallen into that category of the original trilogy actors where, you know, they're doing other things, but they just haven't been able to reach that other plateau of stardom. Oscar Isaac seems to have taken the role of sort of Harrison Ford in being able to extend himself beyond, beyond the Star Wars franchise. Carrie Fisher obviously made a name for herself too, but, when you think Oscar Isaac, you don't necessarily immediately go Star Wars, whereas you think Daisy Ridley, you think John Boyega, you kind of immediately go to Star Wars. And so I could definitely see something in the future, and I hope we do see something in the future with Rey. I think that would be awesome. If it included Ben Solo in some way, shape, or form, I think that would be cool, but I don't see any of that in the works, especially based off of everything that we know is coming out so far or is being planned that has not been discussed in the least bit. So I would be curious, Salvador, of what that source was. But yes, Daisy Ridley did have lunch with Kathleen Kennedy. Could mean nothing, but also could mean something. Probably won't find out for quite a long time, though. All right, before we wrap up, I just want to take a moment and talk about my science fiction space opera series, EMBARK. I wrote EMBARK because of my love of science fiction novels and film. When I wrote the first story, I wanted to know what it felt like to create my own world and universe the way that George Lucas did. And I wrote a story that combines some of my favorite elements of science fiction and adventure films. It's got a, for as weird as it sounds, sort of a Fast and Furious vibe to it, simply from the standpoint of the main group of characters. I wanted something to be something that was also a part disaster film. My intent was to write a space opera, and the first book, the intention was, how do I get everybody off of Earth out among the stars? And that's what the first book does. I never knew for sure whether or not I would write more stories after I wrote EMBARK Book 1, and now I am currently halfway through writing Book 7. I expected to have it done by now, but life slowed me down, and hopefully I'll have it done before the end of the year and have it out sometime at the beginning of next year. If you want to support the show, and you have not done so already, please head over to mynerdworld.net. You can hit the links right there on the homepage, or go to amazon.com, search for EMBARK, Jon, Jon Justice, and you will find all the books there available in paperback, hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. The only book that does not have an audiobook yet is Book 6. The most recent book. Still working on editing that one down. But books 1 through 5 all have, again, audiobook, ebook, paperback, and hardbacks available. Here is your description for EMBARK Book 1. Katha has found the key to saving humanity. She just doesn't know it yet. The stars are now within reach as global corporations D-Corp and Entercon have made interstellar travel possible and spaceflight available to all humanity. But when an industrial accident inside D-Corp sets off an apocalyptic chain of events, all of Earth is at risk. Unaware of the growing catastrophe, headstrong Katha Morrow receives a cryptic message from her father, an aerospace engineer, who died 1 year earlier. Meanwhile, the ruthless Synargum of D-Corp attempts to exploit the global evacuation and gain control. With the help of fellow pilot Taft Guardia, Katha uncovers a shocking discovery that may hold the key to saving humanity from the tyranny of D-Corp's evil leader. Don't miss this fast-paced and action-packed space opera epic. And again, 6 books in, 7th book on the way, and who knows where the story is going to go from there. Great for all ages, and kind of like we talked about before, teen and young adult. I wrote these books for adults, but they are perfectly acceptable for children to read, much in the same way that Star Wars is. I've had kids as young as 11 and adults all the way up to 65 and 70 enjoy these stories, and I know you will too. So head on over to mynerdworld.net or to amazon.com and search for EMBARK and Jon, Jon Justice. You can pick up Book 1 in ebook for only 99 cents, and you can pick up the full trilogy of Book 1, Book 2, Treasure in Darkness, and Book 3, The Vanishing War, for a discounted price if you buy the ebook trilogy of just $3.99. Otherwise, all the other ebooks are priced at $2.99, and the paperbacks and the hardcovers are all priced just based on length. So, again, mynerdworld.net, go and check it out. That wraps up the show for this week, one of the biggest ones we've done for quite a long time. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did recording it, and I'll be back again next week, hopefully hearing from you with your listener feedback, talkshownerd@gmail.com, and whatever news drops between now and then. I hope wherever you are happy. I hope you're healthy, and I hope you're safe. And we'll talk to you real soon. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.